Alibaba is one of the safest places where you can find manufacturers. That said, there are still lots of scams that happen on the platform, and in my experience, there's really 5 main scams that you need to be aware of. So in this video, I'm going to explain what these 5 scams are, and I'm going to show you how to avoid them. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off talking about the kind of bigger, more overt scams, the more obvious scams, and then later on in the video I'm going to talk about some of the more subtle scams which are easier to miss. So let's talk about scam number 1. So scam number 1 is discounted or cheap branded products. Now what you will often see on Alibaba are that there are companies advertising branded products, so it might be clothing products like Nike or Adidas, or it might be electronic products like PlayStations or whatever it might be. They advertise branded products as genuine branded products, but at cheaper or discounted rates. And when you actually reach out to those manufacturers, it tends to be really 2 of 1 main things that they tell you when you ask them how they're able to kind of get hold of these products. And it tends to be either, number 1, that they have a connection at the factory, so they know someone at the factory who's basically able to kind of siphon off goods for them, which they can sell at a cheaper rate, or they'll say that it came off the back of the lorry. So similar idea, but during transport, they basically managed to siphon off some of the goods or whatever it might be. So it tends to be one of those 2 things. So 99.9% of the time, this is going to be a scam. So obviously in very small situations, it may not be, but the majority of the time, this is going to be a scam. And either you're going to receive fake branded goods, and this is the most likely situation, or you're going to receive just completely different goods, so maybe just unbranded generic goods, or in some situations, just absolutely no goods at all. And the reason for this is that the majority of big manufacturers like Nike or Adidas, they actually have their own factories, they manufacture their own products, and they don't sell wholesale quantities directly from their factories in China to retailers like yourself. Instead, what they tend to do is that they sell to local distributors in the local countries who then sell to retailers like yourself. So you want to be buying from those distributors if you're looking for big brand products. Now, there are some situations where big brands do actually license out the manufacturing to another company, but even if they did that, is that company really going to take a risk? Are they going to really risk this huge contract that they have with one of these big brands just to try and sell you a small number of discounted products? It's just not going to happen. So that's the reason why this is normally a scam. So how can you avoid this scam? Well, it is really simple. Just don't buy big brand products on Alibaba. If you want to buy branded products, if they're a small brand, you can reach out to the brand directly. You might be able to buy from them directly. If it's a bigger brand, you'll normally have to look for local distributors. So now let's talk about scam number 2, which is fake company. So this is literally just a straight up fake company, complete scam. So what some scammers will do, and look, in Alibaba's defense, they're very good at actually trying to find these companies, weed them out, and they do invest quite a lot in kind of scam prevention, but some do fall through the net. So there are some companies, some scammers out there who will basically set up a fake company profile on Alibaba. Maybe they will leave it for a year, so it's got a bit of age to it. Maybe they'll use a few fake transactions to get some transaction history, some fake reviews. They'll set up a fake company website and so on and so on. And the idea is they will try to lure you in to get your business. And then normally what happens 9 times out of 10, what they'll do is when you go to pay for the order, they'll ask you to pay them in a direct method. So they'll ask you to pay them either via bank transfer or deposit or through Western Union, basically any way where you're not protected and you have no way of getting your money back if they don't deliver on their goods. And then essentially, as soon as you've paid them, they will just disappear. They'll just disappear, they won't deliver any goods, and they'll just straight up scam you. And Alibaba will probably remove them once you open a complaint, but by that point, they've taken your money and they've done their scam. Now, although rare, and like I said, Alibaba's pretty on top of this kind of stuff, although rare, this does happen, even though it sounds crazy. So how do you actually go about avoiding this scam? Well, luckily, just like the first scam and all the scams I'm going to talk about in this video, they're actually quite easy to avoid. So let me take you over to Alibaba and I'll show you exactly how you can avoid this scam. Okay, guys, so the way that you avoid this scam is by using specific filters and looking for specific things within Alibaba. So let's say you're on Alibaba and you have searched for the product that you're looking for. What you'll see over the right hand side here is there are these sets of filters. And under supplier features, one of the options is verified supplier. So essentially what a verified supplier is a supplier who's paid Alibaba for a third-party company to go out to the supplier, to the manufacturer. They'll actually inspect the factory, and then they will actually verify that the factory is real. They make the goods they say they are. They say they do. They have the same number of staff they say they do, and that they're a legit company. And then they'll have a verified badge. So just by selecting this verified option, essentially what you're doing is you're only allowing Alibaba to show you legit manufacturers who are verified by a third-party company, which means you're basically going to cut out any of those companies which are going to just basically steal your money and scam you. If you want to go a step further, what you can actually do is select verified pro suppliers instead, which is basically verified suppliers who have been trading for over 5 years. So that increases, it reduces your risk. The longer a company has been trading, the more legit that company is. The second filter that you can pick is also this Alibaba trade assurance setting, which will only show you manufacturers that also enroll in trade assurance. And then when you go to pay for your goods, instead of paying your manufacturer directly, and this is the really, really important bit, instead of paying the manufacturer directly in a way that you have no protection, you can pay them through Alibaba Trade Assurance. Now, if you've ever heard of Alibaba Trade Assurance, essentially it's a way to pay your manufacturer through Alibaba in a way that's protected. So the way that it works is when you pay for your order, you essentially pay Alibaba, they hold that money in escrow. And then once the goods have been delivered, once it's been 30 days past the goods being delivered and there have been no quality issues and you're happy with the good, you haven't opened a case or anything, Alibaba will then release that money to the manufacturer and pay them. If, however, you have any issues with the quality of the product's not being delivered, whatever it might be, up until 30 days past the date of delivery, you can actually open a case with Alibaba and they'll step in and they'll help resolve that case with you, which means that you're totally protected. For instance, if no goods arrive in that scam that I was just talking about, in that kind of situation, Alibaba would literally just refund you the money for your goods. So by only looking for verified suppliers and only paying through Alibaba Trade Assurance, you make sure that you're completely protected, not just in these like big overt scams, but even with quality issues. And this is something you should just be doing all the time anyway. Only using verified suppliers and also paying through Alibaba Trade Assurance will also really help with avoiding that first scam, which is getting discounted big brand goods. Because if you receive fake branded goods, again, you can open a claim with Alibaba Trade Assurance. They'll step in, they'll help get it sorted. So you should always be doing this. Okay, so let's talk about scam number 3, which is full production quality. So the first two were very overt, very blatant scams. We're starting to get a little bit more subtle here. But something that often happens is when you contact manufacturers for the first time and you ask to get samples, so it might be unbranded samples or it might be a branded sample, whatever it might be, the sample often that manufacturer will supply to you is a really high quality sample. So it's higher quality than the full production run's going to be. So they'll send you a really high quality sample. They'll get you interested in working with them. They'll get you to approve that sample so that they get your business. And then when it comes to them actually doing the full production, what they'll try and do is implement lots of little cost savings. So sometimes it can be really big things like just simply using a much cheaper material, like a cheaper metal or whatever it might be. But the majority of the time is a bit more subtle than that. So it's small things like, for instance, let's say the product you're buying is double stitched. Instead of using 2 stitches, they'll just use a single stitch. Or let's say it's in a cardboard box, they'll go to a single ply cardboard box or double ply instead of a 3-ply cardboard box. So they implement these really small changes to save costs on labor, materials, whatever it might be. And the idea is that they hope that you won't really notice them. And this happens a lot with Amazon sellers because manufacturers know you're not receiving the goods yourself. They're often being shipped directly to the Amazon fulfillment centers, so you might not see the goods before they're delivered. And they're hoping that you won't notice these small changes. And they seem like really small things, but these manufacturers work on really tight margins. And these really small cost savings actually help improve their profit margins by quite a lot. And unfortunately, this is something that happens quite a lot. It's happened with me. It's happened with lots of the clients that I've worked with. So this is something to look out for. The good news is, just like the other scams, again, it's easy to avoid. So how do you actually go about avoiding this scam? Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record here, but the first thing you want to do, again, is only look for verified manufacturers, only look for manufacturers that accept trade assurance, and also look for manufacturers that have been trading for a long period of time. This is all going to help only find manufacturers who are a bit more trustworthy. But even with trustworthy manufacturers, even if you do that, this can still happen. So the real foolproof way to avoid the scam is basically when you get those original samples, whether they're unbranded or branded, any of those samples that you approve before full production, hold on to them and ideally get more than one. Then what you want to do is before you pay your remaining balance and the goods are actually shipped, what you want to do is book a third-party pre-shipment inspection with a Chinese-based or a local-based inspection company. And you want to post that inspection company one of the samples that you approved. Now, what that inspection company is going to do is they're going to go to your manufacturer's address, they're going to go to the factory, and they're going to inspect a certain percentage of the goods randomly. They're going to look at the quality of the product, they're going to look at how the goods have been packaged, make sure the barcodes scanned properly, make sure that they're labeled correctly, specifically for Amazon. If they're going into Amazon, they'll do all of that and make sure everything has been done to the right quality standards. And the great thing is if you send them one of your original samples, they can compare the original sample to your full production goods. And if there's a difference in quality, they can tell you in their inspection report. The report will fail, and then you can actually work with your manufacturer to get those issues resolved before you've actually paid your remaining balance. And if you've paid through Alibaba Trade Assurance, if you just can't resolve those issues, then you can open a case with Alibaba and they'll actually step in and actually mediate on your behalf. Okay guys, so now let's talk about scam number 4, which is increasing prices. Now this is really, really common, and it's important to point out that this isn't always a scam. So this does actually happen legitimately sometimes. I mean, this specifically did happen quite a lot during COVID. But what tends to happen here is that basically your manufacturer will agree on a cost per unit to try and get your business. And then sometimes during production, although it's more rare during production, more commonly between your first order and second order, your manufacturer will actually increase the unit cost. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you that this is due to increasing material costs. Now, like I said, sometimes this is true, and specifically during COVID, there was a massive rise in material costs. For example, some of my products come in cardboard packaging and wood materials, so paper, cardboard. There was a big increase in those raw material costs, and that was legitimate. So it can sometimes be legitimate, but a lot of the time, this is something that they just use to try and rise up the price per unit, increase basically their income, increase their profit margins between your first and second order, and it's a bit of a scam. So how do you avoid this? Well, again, use verified suppliers, use suppliers that have been trading for many years. But importantly, what you can also do is you would have been speaking to likely many manufacturers. If you weren't, then you weren't sourcing properly, but you should have been talking to, negotiating with lots of different manufacturers before you chose this final manufacturer. So all you need to do is contact those other manufacturers and ask them to re-quote you for the same products, and then also ask them if there's been any material price increases. Now, if lots of them come back to you and they have a higher price per unit when they requote and they say there have been material price increases, then you know that your manufacturer is telling the truth. If none of them do and they all come back to you with the same price and they tell you there's been no price increases, then you know your manufacturer's been lying to you. So this is a really, really easy way to try and avoid this scam and work out whether you're being told the truth or whether they're lying to you. Okay, so now let's talk about the 5th and final Alibaba scam, which is DDP shipping. Now, what you often find is that when you're speaking to manufacturers and you're getting prices and you're discussing shipping, often it will be cheaper to purchase the goods on DDP terms and get your manufacturer to ship those goods for you than it is to actually use your own freight forwarder. Now, if you don't know what DDP is, basically DDP is an Incoterm, and these Incoterms determine at what point the goods become whose responsibility. So, for example, with FOB terms, when you buy the goods, the manufacturer is responsible for getting the goods to the nearest port, and then it becomes your responsibility or your freight forwarder's responsibility from that point to get it from the nearest port to the final destination. If instead you buy on DDP terms, this stands for delivered duties paid, and essentially it's the manufacturer's responsibility. So within the price that you pay for the goods, it's the manufacturer's responsibility to ship those goods to the final destination and also pay the import duties and import VAT. And what you'll sometimes find is it's cheaper to get them to do that with DDP terms than it is to buy on FOB terms or EXW terms and get your own freight forwarder to actually ship those goods. But you've got to ask yourself, why is it cheaper? Now, this isn't always the case. But a lot of the time, and something that does happen quite commonly, is actually the manufacturer will underdeclare the value of the goods so that they have to pay less import duties and less VAT. That's how they're actually able to save costs and offer you a cheaper price. And actually, that is really illegal, and you can get into a lot of trouble for that. Another very common scam that happens is basically Chinese companies, manufacturers sometimes work with like sister companies based in the UK who are VAT registered, and they'll basically ship those goods to the VAT registered UK business, who then send it on to you. And that UK-based VAT business, that UK-based VAT registered business will actually reclaim that VAT. And then even though you're paying the VAT to the Chinese manufacturer, so no VAT is paid to the government essentially, but you're paying a Chinese manufacturer. So there's a bunch of different VAT scams and things that happen. Give it a Google, you'll find loads of stuff. Speak to any freight forwarder and they'll tell you loads of things about this. But either way, you can get into a lot of trouble and you just don't have that much control. So how do you avoid this scam? Well, it's super simple. Don't buy goods on DDP terms. Instead, buy them on EXW terms or FOB terms and get your own freight forwarder to ship those goods for you. It gives you more control and it just avoids any of the issues that I just mentioned. And if you're based in the UK, check out Westbound Logistics. They're a great company. Riley, Lucy, the whole team are super, super helpful there, and they can help you for all of your freight forwarding needs. Okay, guys, so those are the 5 most common Alibaba scams that I've personally come across or heard about. Hopefully, by me explaining them to you and showing you how to avoid them, it's going to help you avoid those scams. So if you found the video useful, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.